I am 31 years old, and I got blessed this year at 31 years old after looking for a very long time. I think I started looking at around 18 or 19 years old. So definitely like more than a decade.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the MatchNet podcast. We're changing up a little bit. I'm hosting Yana Johnson, Director of Blessing and Family Ministry. And I am so excited today to be interviewing Yoshie Manaka. You may know of her. She's our social media manager for Family Fed and also recently blessed in April 2022, this past blessing. Yoshie, I wanted to give you a little chance to introduce yourself to the audience, and we'll get started in our podcast topic today.
Okay. Hello, everybody. I'm excited to be here. Yes, my name is Yoshie. As Yana said, I am the social media manager, and you've probably seen me doing some recordings in the past. I am 31 years old, and I got blessed this year at 31 years old after looking for a very long time. I think I started looking at around 18 or 19 years old. So definitely like more than a decade of experience of specifically like being in matching processes, or like the perspective of like just meeting somebody, or like the reaching out on the websites and stuff. I have many years of experience of that, and then just the one experience of being like matched and blessed. And so I don't know, I'm, as far as like married life goes, I'm very, very new. But I feel like a little bit of a I don't know, like, anyway, like an expert when it comes to like being single and looking for your potential spouse.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought that up, Yoshie, because that's one of the biggest reasons we're interested. I feel like there are many of our listeners and those in the audience that have experienced like going through the matching process and looking for someone for quite a long time. And I have to say, I say it to you when I see you in person. Maybe they can see it through the screen. I'm always like, you're glowing, Yoshie. Marriage looks so good on you. So just so happy for you. And I feel like we're going to dive deeper into what those years were like, from 18 to 31, going a little more in that journey, because there are a lot that are in a similar experience and situation. So I think I'm so happy and grateful you agreed to be on the podcast, and we can take time to go through this and what it's going to be for our audience and those listening. So I think,
yeah, excited to be here, and definitely if my experience can help anybody get there a little faster than me,
yes.
it'll be worth it.
Yeah. So I feel like there's so many questions want to ask, but I think it is kind of nice to just get an overview of like how you met, introduce your husband now, and how you met a little, and then we'll go a little deeper into like kind of going backwards in what it took to get there.
Sure.
So, yeah.
Okay.
How did you meet? And who is he? I don't think we introduced
my new husband is named Matthew Breland. He is from Bridgeport, Connecticut. He's 30 years old, and was blessed before. We met, actually, I mean, I think that we've kind of, we're both pretty involved in church things, and so we've been at events together, but never actually met until we were introduced. We were actually introduced by, shout out to Just Son Doherty. It's I mean, like that's the short version of the story, and the long version is much longer. But I mean, once we started talking, I was staffing a Cranes Club event, like just like a year and a half before we were introduced. And I realized that I had even like taken pictures of him. We were at the same event, and I took pictures, and it did not register that he was there.
It's so mind-blowing.
Until afterwards. Yeah, when it's time, I guess. Yeah, so yeah, I gave you the short version. The long version is, again, like I mentioned, I had been looking for more than 10 years, and I think maybe 2.5 years before we were introduced, a lot of things started happening in my life, a lot of big changes. I started working for the church. I started attending classes at UTS, Unification Theological Seminary. God seemed to kind of be taking my life and just like steering it for me at that point. But I
Wow.
also really felt like the thing that is not moving in my life is matching and blessing. And I don't know why. I'm trying, I want it, and nothing is moving. And it got to the point where it started to feel a lot like God needs me to prove to him by like more effort than I ever thought was necessary that I really want this and I'm serious about it. Like it needs to be a priority in my life. Um, and so I started taking it even more seriously, and I was very lucky to have like, a coach in Naukimi at the time, and Crescentia was my matching supporter. And yes, just kind of like this is how like my main focus, and everything else is a little bit more like less of a priority. And I guess because I work for the church, I felt pretty supported also professionally to be able to do that. Um, anyway, we can talk about what some of those practical points, I think, a little
Yeah,
bit
it's
later.
so, because
Um,
one thing I wanted to ask you just about that, yeah, I mean, you're going in, these are the 2 years, you sort of noticed a significant, and is there like one example or experience where you felt like God was, like you said, you sort of felt like God was wanting you to prioritize this more and show that this was really serious, more effort than you felt? Is there a specific moment you remember that, or what kind of shifted that for you? 2 years we're talking about, this is when you
mm,
were like 29, or am I getting that right?
yes, yeah, something like that.
Yeah, so it's been almost, that's like over 10 years from starting from
Yeah.
18. And yeah, just dive a little deeper there, because I'm
Okay.
curious how that
um,
felt for you, or what you realized.
okay, so again, I was receiving coaching actually through UTS, with Naukimi, and he was helping me kind of work through and put some goals down that were related to my career and my job. And I was surprised at how kind of liberated it felt to be able to put like these like tangible goals, um, to what I was doing in my career. And I was like, wow, this feels so effective. Can we do the
Yes,
same thing with my matching process?
yes,
And so I kind of invited President Naukimi into my matching process. He is now president. He wasn't at the time. And to kind of like dig through and figure out what was blocking me. And some of the things that came up was, one was just kind of I was just really petrified of uh, rejection, I think. And I was more comfortable being in the space of like, it's not a no, but it's not a yes, because you're not asking and you're not taking action, but it's safe because it's not a no. And that's a really dangerous place to be in, because you can be there for years. Um,
wow,
so like a no is actually, this is a big thing that I learned, I think, along the way. A no is like a great thing because it's like substantial, and it's a data point and you can move forward um, much more quickly if you have a no.
wow,
So like I think becoming more comfortable with no's was like so scary for me, but it was so necessary for me to be able to make any effort on my own part, to find somebody. Yes. So anyway, I'm talking to Naokimi, unpacking these things that are keeping me from, moving forward, uh, and he said to me, I think you need to practice your pickup lines. And so like, yeah, so I went to a 24 plus kind of um thing. Again, things were just lining up in my life so that like I happened to be, like having consistent phone calls for 6 weeks with Naokimi just around the same time that there was a 24 plus workshop, and I went with this kind of homework to, uh, like approach people myself. And I think we even put like a number of 4 people on it.
Yeah.
And it was really about like, I need to practice, having this difficult conversation. And I didn't actually end up approaching 4 people. I approached 1.
Okay.
Um, but, it didn't even matter who that person was and what that person said. Um, it was the act that I was breaking through this thing that I was like pushing up against,
Yeah, totally.
and really proving. This was the point where I really felt like I was proving to God that this matters to me
Mm.
enough that I'm going to like work harder than my like what I think my boundaries are,
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And honestly, the minute after I like sat down and had this conversation with him, I was walking back to kind of collect my sleeping bag. And it was in California, and the sun was like, the hot sun was shining, and like there was a breeze through like the desert flowers. And I really just felt this moment of like, God is so grateful to me
Mm.
for doing this. And not just me, but like everybody else who was at this 24 plus, the fact that they really believe in the blessing and want this kind of, eternal commitment, and
Yeah,
enough so that they traveled here and they're going to have, this kind of intense, awkward time. you know,
yeah.
Everybody's making effort. I felt so clearly God's gratitude for me and for us for trying at that moment.
That's
Yes.
so beautiful. Thank you for sharing, Yoshie. I feel like there's so many relatable points in that, and also like bringing in God's perspective in it too. I feel it's like, yeah, just for trying. I think sometimes we can be so much pressure on ourselves, not doing enough or this or that, but just the gratitude for trying.
Mhm.
If you were like, thanks for, I think that specific experience really helps to get like what you're talking about there. And if you were to say it in some like general for people, what were like beliefs and skills that, or qualities you developed that really served you well in this like matching process experience? And I'm sure, I know that you had like that distinct moment leading up to it, but also maybe along throughout the years,
Yeah.
that sort of helped you open up, even saying yes to coaching. A lot of those things are not easy to do.
Right.
Going to 24 plus, it takes a lot. Shout out, there will be one this year in person. So
I
it's very
think I
timely
actually just
after
agreed to be
COVID.
one of the staff couples.
That's awesome. So
So
some
you'll
of
see
you
me there.
listening can meet Yoshie in person. Yeah. So, but those are not easy steps. And that's what I want to acknowledge. Like there's a lot of ways, I'm sure people feeling they've been putting themselves out there. They're doing those steps, or, trying to prove their seriousness about it. And still, how do you keep that momentum? Because it's like there's, you do feel a little bit of an expectation, or like, okay, what's going to happen next? Or I don't know. So it kind of, what helped you, beliefs or skills, things like that, that
Mm.
sort of process that? Because yeah, I think it could be a lot. um
Yeah, I think, there's probably a lot of different things. The first thing that jumps to mind is really like being clear in your own value and who you are to
mm,
God is so important. Um, and it helps so much, especially when it comes to having, again, my fear was rejection.
yeah, yeah.
um, and I think the mindset of rejection is the wrong place to be in, because really we're all on the same team. We're all trying to find one person, and if it's not this person, it's a good thing, and like wish each other well on your journey to find your one person. But we're on a team just trying to uncover who the right person is for each other.
Yeah.
And so the honestly, I think maybe this is going to turn into a 24 plus like commercial. But like the practice of going to a 24 plus was really helpful in figuring that out, because it's like high energy conversation after conversation. There's a lot of people, there's a lot of potential and possibilities, but it can be really like overwhelming, and like you have to really like wear your sense of value like armor
Oh yeah.
in
Yeah.
that like situation. And so the more kind of practice I had with meeting people and talking to people, um, the better I got, I think, at really feeling like we are on the same team and we're trying to figure this out together.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
so yes, that's a big one. I think in the same vein, the early stages of a matching process don't have to be so serious because of
Hmm.
this.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, you're just getting to know somebody and just kind of seeing what they're like. And um, I think I've seen it a lot in my peers, this kind of like people put a lot of importance in the first couple of steps, like maybe like they read a profile and they feel pretty like it's pretty promising.
Yeah.
um but they didn't their parents didn't even reach out to this person yet, and they think like this is the one.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
and so I think there's a certain level of, I think, self-protection in just like being a little casual at the very beginning. Like, yes, pray a lot, but don't put like, an eternity's worth of importance on those first couple of steps, because like you're just trying to meet somebody, um, and figure out who they are and whether or not it works with who you are. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's so key to like, I'm always saying this, but I feel like you're giving the concrete example of like, what are ways you can just take a little pressure off of, whatever the areas you feel you're getting stuck. And I think approaching people, rejection, these are all, it's very real. It's very challenging on your value and everything, but how to ease that up, because there's,
Yeah, I
masculine
think I
blessing is a
actually
big
have a
deal.
couple of
Eternal partner is a big deal. Not to not take it seriously, but also where do we
exactly
take off some of that pressure.
right.
That's a
I
huge
do have a couple of other points, I think, now that I think about it a little bit more, and maybe I can tie it back into my long story of how
Yeah,
lucky I
sure,
met.
sure. I mean, that's what's cool.
um
It's all connected.
yeah. uh so I had attended a 24 plus, the first online one,
Okay.
actually. And I met somebody and we were in a process, and I think I learned a lot through that process. Yeah, so I think in that process, the things that kind of were that I decided I needed to put in place during that process were really helpful, and interesting tips. And I would continue, if I were still like going through this, I would probably continue to put these in practice. We did the the question sheet really early on, and then decided to get into a further process. But I started to feel a little like this is feeling really casual. And I don't want things to get casual. I want to be intentional here.
Yeah.
And I think putting structures in place, to, like, for instance, we would like do like a 100K reading at the beginning of every call. And we had scheduled call times for a few hours 2 times a week.
Okay.
um, and we texted, but we didn't like have any kind of other calls outside of that. So then we had stuff to talk about, when we
Yeah,
when we
yeah.
kind of like came back together and met in person, or met online, I guess. Um, and uh, we also started reading relationship books together just to kind of like once the 40 questions were over and we were kind of thinking, yes, there is potential here. There's still so much that you need to learn about a person before you can kind of decide that forever is a good idea. And so the relationship books again helped us both kind of keep learning about ourselves and each
Mhm.
other, in like a structured way, and be able to kind of talk about, like I read this thing, I think I see that in myself, and kind of talk about how potentially that could work, with another person. Uh, so that's a tip and a skill that I would
Yeah,
continue on. The other thing that happened in that process was that I was really communicative with my parents about it, and I felt like we were on the same page, from the start. And I was also very honest with him about where I was, because what I felt basically was that he was more committed and like in it than I was at the time, and I wasn't it was kind of scaring me because I wasn't
yeah.
sure if I could get there. And so putting these structures in place allowed me to feel like safe to kind of continue to explore, even though like I knew that there was kind of a kind of big difference in feelings, and being able to communicate that with him was really important, and being able to communicate that with my parents was really important. um yes. So uh yeah, and then in my following process, which ended up being the one that worked, a lot of those structures actually carried through, and
Mhm.
made it to be a really kind of stress-free process, I think, because the structures were pretty clear, and I could kind of come and say like, this is what I have already been doing. What do you
Yeah,
think about doing this? Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I mean, it's easy for us from PFM to be like, the structure is this to support you. Like, I feel like we chant that all the time, but it's so nice to hear how you use that like intentionally in your way, and that the safety it created, because I think you're touching on so many points and questions that come up of like someone is more interested and committed and ready, and how do you still explore it or not, and what to do. And exactly the
Yeah. Because I
having
mean,
structures for you, not to like make it like, I don't know,
yeah,
restrictive, but it creates a space to work within. What
yeah.
were you gonna say? Yeah.
Being ready for the blessing, I think, is one thing. And
Right.
then, but when you're faced with like an actual person in front of you, it's always going to be kind of like a big question anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And either it's a yes or a no, but either way, there's gonna be stress, and it's gonna be scary. Yeah. So those structures I did find ended up being very, very helpful. Yeah. In my process with Matthew, I think it was a little bit different. I was a little bit more, I felt pretty free and safe from the beginning. And
Mm,
he felt very strongly about like we should do the 7 months, matching
okay.
process, like because because the handbook says so, basically.
Yeah.
But the closer we got actually to that 7 month point, the more kind of nervous I started to feel, even though I like
Mm,
already kind of knew that he was a good person, and like this could be a really good thing. Just the concept of like a yes or a no made me more and more nervous, and made me grateful for waiting for the 7 months.
wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wait, so many questions are coming up there. I mean, I think well, like as you're saying that, the nervousness, and then how your own challenge with rejection. I mean, one of the questions I've got here for you was like, I guess I want to ask them now and you can weave them in, but
Okay.
um thinking about our audience too, like what would you tell your younger self to help through the matching process? I think we've touched on some of these things here, but I like kind of an overarching and also something you had to overcome in order to find a match and go
Mhm.
to the blessing. And you touched on these already, and I just wanted to, because I feel your these specific examples with the last two matching processes you went through and the structure, but also, you know, feeling those feelings of rejection was such a big thing. Yeah, I feel like we're all getting a glimpse of like the ways that you grew through that, but also now it's easier, it's nice to reflect on it looking back. I think a lot of people feel like, oh yeah, it's easier, it all makes sense looking back. But again, in when you're in it, as a younger self, or like the biggest thing you had to overcome, it sort of all makes sense now. But I know that you know well, because this was for so many years. Yeah, kind of stepping back even before things started to get more clear, or you honed in those skills. What were the things you wish you would have told maybe your 18-year-old self, right? That
Yeah.
younger one. Because there's so many things I hear you. I'm also in my 30s. I feel like one of the things I love about getting older is you do learn to like take a little pressure off yourself. Like it's more natural to do
Yeah.
that in something. But
Mhm.
I feel like when you're younger, or you've been through 10 years of looking, so yeah, if we can go a little into that space of what would you have, yeah, knowing what you know now, kind of
Mhm.
told your younger self, or the
Gosh.
biggest thing
Yeah.
you felt you needed to overcome.
Oh man.
It's a lot. It's
18-year-old
a lot. Take
Yoshie
your
was
time. Like
a
stories,
different
examples
person.
are gold
Yeah.
here. It helps.
I think the way that we went about, me and my parents going through the matching process, went through many iterations and evolved a lot
Okay.
over the years, because at 18, I think it makes a lot of sense for the parents to be very involved in the process. Um, and they still were the older I got, but there was a certain point where um, they didn't know anybody anymore.
Yeah.
We had kind of exhausted the resources, the websites, everything, and they kind of came to me and they were like, you know more people than us, and so we need to
Um,
rely on you to kind of make suggestions now. So
mm. When was that? Can I just ask what was?
uh 24 maybe.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. um yeah. 24, 25. I'm after college I moved to New York, and so I had like a different um kind of circle than my parents had at that point, and
Yeah.
it's true. Yeah. So what would I tell 18-year-old Yoshie? I think that I would tell her it's okay.
Yeah.
Because I think that, I mean, to be perfectly honest, I had this knot in my stomach, this kind of like fear and insecurity knot. And I had been in processes, and like it was like an intuition, like I don't think this will work kind of knot. And I think I had it in pretty much every single process I was in
Mm.
until the last one. Um, but I mean, the truth is that like it wasn't even really about, the brothers that I was in processes with, right? It was that I think I knew that I needed to work through who I am and be good with who I am
Yeah.
before I can like present that to another person, be like, here I am. Do you want it for life?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think if people are really honest with themselves, they know what those things are that they need to work through. And I just didn't really I didn't want to look at it
Mm.
until it was really clear that nothing was going to move until I did start looking at it. For me, really, what it ended up being was like who I am to God, and what my relationship with God is, what my personal mission is in my life. That needed God needed that to be clear for
Hmm.
me. I don't think it's the same for everybody, but that
Yeah.
was that was the reason why things weren't moving for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, so once that kind of was something that I was comfortable with really looking at, and like being like I was uncomfortable in this
Yeah.
process, but like accepting myself, then things, I mean, then it, like the rejection didn't matter so much because I knew who I was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I kind of also knew that not everybody could fit with this, because this, who I am to God, the things that I like the best about myself, um, really, like for me, are closely tied to faith, and not everybody will get that. And I really want to be like truly understood. And
Yeah.
that's important to me. And so somebody who like um kind of like vibes, with that, like, yeah, started to become like really important. So actually I think maybe my priorities made it so that the pool that I was looking at was smaller. Like I got more picky, but it was clear that
Mhm.
these are the things that are kind of non-negotiable because it's who I am, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It came
um
from this
so
clarity.
yeah, anyway, yeah, so I think I would just tell myself, my 18-year-old Yoshie, that it's okay. um and I think I would encourage myself to try to do that work faster, because
Mhm.
I do think that I'm the one who's responsible for dragging my feet on this thing that I kind of knew that I needed to kind of digest about myself.
Yeah. Yeah.
um
Not easy though. I think for many,
no.
right? It's
Yeah.
really it's a lot of like layers and I was something I remember because we've chatted a bit before, like
Yeah.
before the podcast, and yeah, that feeling of just like you touched on it about feeling stuck or just not moving forward, and I don't know, that kind of space, being in that space for a while. Part of it was because of the fear of rejection and working on learning your own value, but um, if you're able to just share a little bit more about, because I do think that's something that a lot of people feel, and there's a lot of, everybody's situation is so different, and there's a lot of different factors. Like COVID is a whole other brings another layer of challenges that's already, you've got to do a lot of things to sort of put yourself out there and go through. But um yeah, I don't know if it goes into like this is the biggest thing you had to overcome, but in that space of where you felt like you were maybe, I don't even think the word stuck is the best one, but it was more just like not moving maybe, right?
Mhm.
Or
Right.
um can you just go in a little bit of like what was going on in your mind then, and what you wish, like it's okay, is that what you'd wish you would say, or to those who are
Mm.
feeling that right now,
Okay.
um
Yeah.
what do you,
Yes.
yeah, what would you say to them? Because I really, I think we're gonna have you on again because there's so many other things that were coming up, but I'm trying to
Okay.
narrow in on this for this episode because I think, yeah, it
Okay.
speaks to a lot of experience for many. And
If you're stuck, I think, yeah, I think the two most dangerous things you can do, one is stop making effort, or like
mhm.
non-action is the most dangerous thing that you can do. The second thing is falling into negativity. you
Oh
know,
boy, yeah.
like there's nobody out there for me. I'm unlovable. Nobody has, like ever approached me. Like I think this podcast talks quite a lot about what do you call them? Like limiting
Limiting beliefs.
beliefs. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, totally. Yep.
Yeah. Um, yeah. So anyway, like work through the limiting beliefs, but like bringing that kind of like element of negativity into the matching process just doesn't help.
Mm,
It won't get you somebody sooner. It'll just make you, like, every interaction you have will just like you'll just kind of feel a little like resistant, or um anyway, yeah, uh upset about it.
yeah.
And you don't want to bring that energy into like a beautiful blessing anyway. So like let go of that negativity.
Mm.
I had some rules for myself, and even before things started moving in my life. Um, One was, you're not allowed to complain about how long it's taking if you're not doing absolutely everything in your effort to change that.
Yeah.
And so
Ooh.
some of the things that I was doing, um yeah, and there's always more you can be doing, right? But
True. I
anyway,
feel
some
like
of the
that
things that I
applies
was
to every area of life. I'm just saying, you're talking to me now too. Like, I think there's other
yeah,
areas that could be
right,
moving.
right. But like, you go to all of the retreats, like the 24 plus, the online, the in person. Yes, those, but also like, are you going to church?
Mm.
You have to be seen if you're single. People have to know that you exist.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are you going to, yeah, like retreats or like young unificationist gatherings? There are a lot of things. I think I saw on Facebook, somebody's organizing like a singles game night online,
Yeah.
like take advantage of the things that are available to you. Like, yes, the websites suck, but is your profile actually up? Because if your profile isn't up, then you can't complain about it. Is it updated? Do you have a nice photo of yourself up there?
Yeah.
Like, even I'm the social media manager. So like, even for me, a little bit of it is like, are you active on social media?
Yeah.
Do people know
Yeah.
you exist? And then the other rule that I really saw a lot of people kind of, a lot of my peers in my life, they get into this place where they're like, they hate it when people ask them about whether or not they're single, right?
Mhm. Yeah.
Like, because it feels like an attack, but it's not. Like, people genuinely love you and want to like know that you're happy, and you never know where the connection is going to come from,
That's a
right?
good point. Ooh,
So
I got
like
chills. Yeah.
So, like the nosy auntie who's asking you if you're matched yet, be nice to her. Tell her, no, I'm looking. If you have any thoughts, let me know, you know? um, yeah, because you don't know like who is looking for their son, or their nephew or somebody that they love. Um, and I think, yeah, that's ultimately, I mean, again, long version of the story. I was at a YAYAM summit, and I met Justin Doherty for the first time there. And I was talking to Leighton and Chris, his wife, Crescentia, is my supporter. And, he was like standing with a goofy smile on his face. Like, I'm just thinking about all the people I love in this room and how I'd like to see them married. And so I'm talking to him, and Justin walks over, and I'm single. And so I say, oh, we're just talking about how to, get me married. And he was like, oh, you're still single? You're such a quality lady. Yeah, I'm looking for like 7 people right now. And so then he just like asked me a bunch of questions. Like, what do you think about third world countries? What do you like, education level? Like,
Mm.
what do you think about somebody who's been blessed before? Just like question, 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 question. And then like from that, he kind of had somebody in his mind. And he didn't actually like connect us for another year and a half. But it's because I was making it known that I was looking.
Yep.
I was
Yep.
showing up to the things. I was giving my time to all of these different organizations, and because yeah, I thought it was important to be there and be seen.
Yeah. Yep. Showing up is a huge part of the work. I know there's a quote like
Yeah.
that. Percentage. This has been so awesome, Yoshie. I just wonder if there's any last words you want to wrap up here. I think there's parts of your story that I think would be great to go into more again. So, and I'm sure we'll hear it from the audience to hear back. If there's any questions, please send us your questions. This podcast is driven around questions. So what are common questions coming up in the matching and blessing process? Also, if you love listening, please spread the word. If there's someone you're thinking of who would really appreciate this specific episode, like send them the link, over text or messenger. This is really here to serve you. And also connect to MatchNet. So you can find out more in the links below. But I want to hand it back to Yoshie huge thank you. And if there's any final words you'd like to say, yeah, take it away.
Yeah, my final word, and it's a lesson that I've learned over like the last 10 years. I think, anyway, God wants you to be happy. Yes.
Keep going. Yeah.
And also, when you're looking for somebody, just remember that God wants you to be happy and you're going to spend a lot of time with this person in the future. And so you better enjoy their company, like that I think, especially in the early stages of the matching process is, when you're trying to keep it light,
Yeah.
do we enjoy each other's company? Do we like, can I imagine 80 years of this?
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Oh, I
God
love
wants
it.
you to be happy. So let that be your kind of North Star in this whole process.
You. Wow. Achoo. Thank you. Thank you, everyone. We love you. Bye.
Bye. Thanks for having me.